You know, a couple minutes ago, I turned around and said, it's still business as usual. You know, we just got a couple more words we have to say. And Denny, Gordy, Catherine and myself, we've been going through this left and right, and I've disagreed with some of the things TRESA wanted, and I'll take them on in that respect because a couple people here had listings returned because they didn't have Form 203, a list of services attached. And if you all remember the email I sent out before, or no, it would have been last week, Tuesday, that I sent out. Because on the listing, it says schedules, and you know, our board was looking for schedules, list of services, because even in all the paperwork, it says we should list all our services. It doesn't say we shall list all our services. And we're not doing that, because the plain fact is, as I said in the email, if all of a sudden you turn around and list that you're gonna do a drone video, you're gonna do open house, you do certain advertising, and it comes time that you know you end up selling it before you get to do all that, there's the odd smart seller, and especially if they get their lawyer involved, that might turn around and say, well, wait a minute, you didn't do that drone. Does a drone cost $700? Yeah. Well, then I want that reduced off my commission. Okay. Does you never had an open house. Does that ad cost $150? Yeah. I want that reduced off my commission. You know, this came quite fast, and there's some parts of it we don't think were clearly thought out by RICO in trying to direct us. So the bottom line is we're going to turn around, like on the listing, it's on the listing, it's 16. On the buyer's contract, and this goes for buyer's contracts too, is number 13. I'm directing you to put a not applicable in Schedule A, or a schedule, schedules it is, 16 or clause 13 in the buyer's contract. Because right underneath both of them, and I'll read the words that most of you have, this is what they're hiring us to do. The listing brokerage agrees to market the property on behalf of the seller and represent the seller in an endeavor to obtain a valid offer to purchase the property on the terms set out in this agreement or on such terms satisfactory to the seller. What do they want? They want their home sold for the best price with the fewest problems in the quickest time. Simply put. And many of you have a list of here's what I do for you if needed. Okay? But if you attach that list of what I do to the contract, you're going to put yourself in a predicament. And I'll take RICO on in respect to that. I've already talked to Krista, our board, and said, do not turn a listing back because there's no Form 203. I've also had the conversation with our major competitors that that's the stance I'm taking. Frank Binder, Royal LePage agrees wholehearted with me. Some of the others keep going, but, hey, you do what you want to do. But that's what we're doing, because I'm not going to put any of you in a position where all of a sudden it could cost you some commission, because even though RICO says should have a list of it, they're not going to, let me put it this way, they shall not reimburse you for any commission you lose. That's the one thing about RICO. You know, they set the guidelines, but they don't understand what's going to happen. Now also, in the listing, you know, that may sound vague, but if you go in the listing, where number 6 is marketing. And the marketing paragraph, Yates says, you know, what we do. Earlier I said, what you do is not going to change whatsoever, okay? They're bringing some different forms in, we just have to understand them, okay? This is going to come. Now on the listing form, there's designated agency. In the email I sent out, the designate is going to be you, okay? In the case of we got teams, you know, like I was talking with Mitch and his team, they're putting all 3 of them on as the team, as designated. Because if one is, the issue with the designate is that Gord is designated as the realtor. Gord goes away on vacation. Nobody can accept or act on his behalf because he's the designate, okay? You got to get an amendment done. That the seller knows that, okay, he's gone, we're bringing somebody else to be the designate while he's gone on vacation. I'm sure that's going to change somehow down the road, but you know, it's only if a problem arises, okay? But in the team, this will allows any of the three, or if you're sharing a listing, you're both as designated realtors, so you can act on behalf of the seller. And it goes the same with the buyer. It's the same issue when it comes into that. But now, one of the questions that came up, we just got an answer for. If Gord was the designate for the listing, who can receive and give notices? Just the designated. That's what we thought. We sent that off to Rico, came back up. That's where you as the realtor is the designate. The brokerage, the company REMAX Preferred, is the brokerage for giving services. They've deemed that as a service. So there's a lot of things we can do, but it's just for representing the seller or the buyer. It's a designated realtor. One good thing on that. Over the years, I've talked to a lot of you. You sit on an open house of somebody else's property. Okay, somebody comes in and loves that house and wants to buy that house, and what does the agent that's sitting in the open house, not the listing agent, do? Clientizes them. Okay, that's automatic conflict. Okay, because it's dual agency. But what responsibility do you have of the seller when you've never met this open house buyer? Okay. That was a conflict that put us all in, because we never wanted to say, I got to give you customer service unless you want to go, you know, somewhere else and under contract. We're now, as you're doing an open house and a buyer walks in, they can elect you to be their designate. Okay? And so now you got two designates. It's not dual agency. Okay? It takes away that issue. So that's one of the things we like about the program when it comes to that.
Glenn?
Yes?
For signature for the listing, you have 3 people on their team, 3 people on our team. Everybody signed?
Nope.
Right. So just, even though they're designated, you just like my signature or something?
Whoever's doing the paperwork.
Yeah.
No. Whoever's doing it. Just they're agreeing, you're signing the list, you're witnessing the listing with them.
Correct.
But you're explaining to them, because you're a team, in case you're not available, they're there to be able to accept notices or give. Aldo.
So if I have a listing and I go on vacation, and I'm the designate realtor, and I say, Gord, can you handle this for me? I have to amend my listing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then his name goes on?
You can add.
Or just add it?
Yeah.
Or just add his name?
Just add. Not take you on, just add.
Okay.
That way they can advise, I could advise your client while you're gone.
Because if you're not the designate, you can't advise, is the key word.
Because it falls under representation.
So if I have a listing and I am doing an open house for the same listing.
Yep.
And I get a buyer, no one.
Multiple representation.
Multiple?
Yeah. Because there's no more customer service, so if you want to write an offer with that person, you need to have a BRA. Yeah. So that's the idea with the brokerage designated listing, is that designated representation is that the only time you should experience multiple representation is if you're double ending. Okay? Because if Mike has a buyer on my listing and we're both the designated representative of our each respective client, it's just regular. There's no multiple representation. It's basically like you're selling a competitor's listing. You can still provide all your services and all your representation to your client. You don't have to worry about multiple rep in that regard.
Yeah. Angie, did you have a question?
Yeah, so if I go away, I leave Gord to watch my business, and I say, Gord, in the chance that you have to do a listing or a presentation for my client, get the designated rep signed before you do. Can we just do it that way? So instead of adding someone onto my listing, right, before I leave, in the event that you have to present an offer, when you go talk to my client, you state, hey, listen, in order for me to work on your behalf, you have to sign this designated rep and add me onto it. Instead of amending,
You
say I
could,
have 11 listings
yeah, I get what you're
before I
saying.
leave, right?
Yeah, you could do that. It's just before I get that designation signed, I wouldn't be able to advise your client. I can give them services, but I can't give them my opinion.
Confidentiality is a big word too, because you can't discuss, unless you're the designated rep, you can't discuss why somebody needs to sell. Everything is confidential to the designate, not
Correct.
to the brokerage.
Yeah.
Right, but Gord, you can set up appointments for my client to do everything, and if you have to actually present something or work on their behalf, get the designate signed before you.
Correct, because that would be like setting up showings, et cetera. That's a service.
That's right.
But like if I couldn't do a CMA for them unless I was a designated representation, because that's my opinion, I'm advising them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm understanding.
Yep.
So Gord, you could ask the client to sign that even though Angie's away. I think maybe the conversation had with the client before she leaves that this may come up would be great, but you could, because you're part of the brokerage and offering the services, you could add yourself. You don't need her to do it.
I would say as a best practice, maybe pre-sign one with your signature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would have to sign it because I'm being added to it, right?
Because you're all with the brokerage.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But Steve, you don't have the authority to oversee somebody else's designation,
Yeah.
okay? So the listing agent would have to take care of that.
And like, so in that situation, I would just, in case, give me your initial before you go. On the ones I might need to do it on. Just as a fail-safe, right?
Yep.
Just so we're all on the same page.
Yep.
Yep. So one of the things I'm gonna say, and everything we're gonna talk about here is gonna be massaged over the next 3 months, 4 months for sure. Because what's happening, like TRESA, and I've had a couple issues on this, has asked me to turn around and send an email to her. So, and the other brokerages are doing the same thing, so they can funnel that all back to RICO to say, look at the situations you're creating. You know, the whole idea is to make it more simplified so our sellers and buyers are informed. I don't know how simple it's getting, especially when we have to have meetings and understanding ourselves, okay? I can't help but think, some of you are gonna have to explain to your seller, your buyer 2 or 3 times for them to get it, okay? But the bottom line is, and I'm gonna slam this home, you're still selling real estate the way you always have been. You're just adding some words, okay, is really what's coming in, and some understandings. Okay? Questions out there at all?
Are there any additional forms that we should be adding?
Yeah, there are.
Okay,
I'll
so
go over
are-
it
Is
too.
it possible to get like a checklist sent to us for a listing?
Yeah.
Where?
Maybe I emailed one. Yeah.
I get a lot of. I don't know
I'll make an email with all the new forms, and I will send out an email for what you should be adding to update your transaction kits.
Okay, so we can make sure.
Yeah,
we get
and
that.
just so you know, all the forms that have been revised, they automatically update in your transaction kit. I checked my own, so you don't have to go through and amend your templates. Okay, yeah, so you can keep using your templates, and it will have the updated ATS, it'll have the updated 200, it'll have the updated BRA, you're fine.
Are these forms gonna, like the RICO information guide and the new listing, are they gonna replace the privacy and going over the Realty form? Because they have a lot of that same info.
Well, our privacy form is for collection of their info and to contact them to be compliant with Canada Anti-Spam, so.
Yeah.
our
Nothing to
privacy
do
form-
with this.
Yeah, but,
Has been updated about that.
Yes, it is.
sorry?
In the new listing agreement, there's a paragraph that kind of talks about privacy and collection of information, but it's not, that's.
Well, that might be something we have to look over.
Okay. But regardless, again, there's so many different things in that respect. Regardless, I still want everybody to still do our own privacy consent. Because it's not a little paragraph hidden in the listing.
Yeah.
Okay? It's something that they're acknowledging, giving you permission to use their information to stay in touch with.
And we do that for Canada Anti-Spam, which is separate from this. So it's just a separate, clear disclosure for there.
What did you want to go over with then?
Yeah, so I'm sure you all heard a lot about the RICO guide. What I would say you would do now is favorite this on your phone, your laptop, whatever. It's ricoinfoguide.ca. This is going to be the easiest way to send this out. Now, the mandatory practice we have to do is we have to provide anyone you're looking to provide service with or sign a representation agreement with, you have to provide them with the RICO info guide, okay? That's it. There's no requirement that they have to acknowledge it. There's no requirement that they have to sign it. The requirement is you have to provide it. That being said, it is best practice to get an acknowledgement, because if you ever find yourself in hot water, it becomes he said, she said. So, and like the 810 is updated to have an initial that says, yes, I received it. Same with the SRP form. And this one here, you can see. Brian, grab this. So this website has it built in. This is the easiest way to do it. If you have their email address, Rico made it. You just put in your name, registrant name, email, brokerage name, consumer's first name, last name, email. Okay. Now, if you email it to them this way, you will get an automatic email acknowledgement that they received it. So if that is the laziest way I can think of to say, yeah, I got the acknowledgement, it's right here in the email. Problem is you got to save the email, so you might want to make a separate folder for that, like I would do.
Yeah, but isn't the initial on the working with a realtor just as good? Like, why do I have to go through that?
Yeah, it's one or the other, right? So yeah, if you're getting working with a realtor initialed, it's right there. So you don't worry about this. I would just, you could text it to them, you could just email it to them, you could print it out and give it to them, right? So it's kind of one or the other, right? If you don't want to do it on 810, you could do it this way. If you get 810 filled out every time anyways, just have them initial one extra spot. Because it says you provided it to them and it was explained.
Shouldn't they be getting this before that point though?
Yes.
At the moment you start showing them something, you should be getting this.
You have to give this to them before you show it, before you show them anything.
Pen and paper.
Pardon?
Like before you just put pen and paper, they should have this.
Yes, they have to. That's the new rule. And so I know there might be questions on, well, what if I'm doing, you know, I'm advising them now, but they're not going to list till the spring, okay? There's no timeline on this that doesn't expire. The only rule is you have to give it to them before you provide service or representation agreement. So you could provide them with this now and not list their house for a year, and you're covered. John?
I don't want to get this. I don't want to give you my email. I just want to see the house. What do I do?
Do you have, well, I'm assuming you have their phone number.
Yep.
Text it to them.
Text them.
Okay, so this is why I say favorite this on your phone, okay? Because the other thing you can do, so if you're on your phone, you can download PDFs right here. So if you're on your phone, right, you have it favorited, you click the download there, it pulls up the PDF in a link on your phone. I'm sure Apple, Android is all the same. Copy the link, send it to them. Wow, you're in the wrong business. Because you can't open a lockbox. So that's what I would say, and that's why I'm saying favorite this, because if you have it on your phone, and there's going to be cases we know we don't have email. Sometimes we have email, we don't have phone. Sometimes we have phone, we don't have email, right? You just click Rico Information Guide, download PDF. It'll open it in a tab on your phone. You copy the URL. You open your text messages, you text it to them. And you say, hey, check this over. It explains the different services you have available to you in the industry today. If you have any questions, I can answer them when we meet at the house.
Can we say it's like this is a condition of me showing you the place? I have to give you this information. When you open it,
You just say the government requires me to provide you with this information.
Don't get too complex.
Yeah, it's super simple. You just say it provides you with, you know, the different levels of services you can expect in the industry today. If you have any questions, I'll go over them with you at the house. That's all you got to do.
So just as John was saying, something common that we get is, I've never had to sign this before, so apparently the answer is.
It's new.
Legislation.
Yeah, this was new legislation our government passed as of December 1st. All I have to do is provide it with you.
Well, when I took the TRESA seminar sponsored by REA, Ray Fair said there's two requirements. One is to provide it,
And explain.
the other is to review it. So I was just going to put into the email, I'm ready for any of your questions at any time.
And that's why I would say do that. Like I said, you know, I'll explain it when we get to the house. If you do that in text, if you do it in an email, you have proof that you said you did it.
I would rather just say, if you have any questions, let me know. And that way, otherwise they can argue, hey, Gord never explained anything.
Exactly. And if you don't have the acknowledgement, it's a he said, she said anyways. right? So that's on the 810 working with a realtor. The extra initial that Mitch was saying, it's an extra bolded acknowledgement says, yes, I have received the info guide and yes, it was explained, right? So if you're getting the 810 signed anyways, it's just one extra initial they got to do. You do it there, you're covered. Because then they can't say, oh, you didn't explain it. Well, you acknowledge you did, right?
So when is the 810 to sign?
You usually do that when you get your paperwork, right? I do it in my BRA kit or your listing kit.
Contract.
Yeah. You know, you have the contract, privacy 810. You're going to ID them then too, right? Yeah. It's all your client paperwork. Yeah. So any questions on the info guide? None? Okay, good. It's super simple. And again, the only requirement we have is you have to provide it to them and explain it to them. That's it. There's no requirement on acknowledgement, but it's in your best interest to do that.
What about our current listings and our current buyer representation?
No, it's just any new
Grandfather.
any new clients you have moving forward. Yeah, because everything before would be grandfathered. And so I want to mention that too when we're talking about designated representation. So moving forward, we should all be doing designated rep again because we said it's cleaner, in-house, avoids multiple rep. So if you have any old listings or old BRAs with somebody, they're under brokerage rep. So the thing you have to be aware of, Mary, so if you have an old listing under brokerage rep and I have a new buyer under designated representation, if we do a deal together, it's multiple rep, okay? If you have designated representation and brokerage representation on each side and it's in-house, it's multiple rep. The only time you don't have multiple rep is when both sides are the designated rep in-house, okay? I just want you guys to be aware of that.
So is there an amendment then for existing listings we can have something that simply says the designated representative is so-and-so?
I don't see a problem with that because the current forms say that.
Redo the contract.
Or redo the contract, yeah. Because it'd be on the current forms, if you're concerned about it. If not, you just be aware that your old contract before December 1st would be brokerage rep. Okay? Because brokerage rep still exists, right? It's still a thing. It's just designated rep's a little cleaner.
So if there's a listing listed a month ago and I bring a buyer in, it's multiple representation, you go on designated rep.
If it's in-house, yeah. Like if it's Roger's listing and it's like a month old, yeah. And if you do a deal together, it'd be multiple rep. Okay? All right. And so, since we're on the topic of multiple rep, another thing TRESA changed is the timing of the disclosure, well, the timing of the consent for multiple rep. Because before we got consent for multiple rep on the confirmation cooperation at the table, okay? The change that has been made is that we now have to get consent for multiple rep when it is formed, okay? Example, your listing, you're doing an open house on your own listing, buyer comes through, you talk to them, you pre-qualify them, doing this and that. Yeah, I want to write an offer. No, I don't have a realtor. Yeah, I'd like you to sign the offer, okay? Or I'd like you to write the offer for me, okay? Now at that point, TRESA wants you to say, hold up, pump the brakes, go get consent from your seller, then move forward with a buyer rep and write the offer with them, okay? Realistically, probably not going to happen. Really? So what I would suggest is just, this is the new acknowledgement consent for multiple rep disclosure. Just get it signed at the listing. We're fine with that because the wording it says right here is it says the seller hereby acknowledges that the listing brokerage may be entering into a proposed contract with a buyer. Okay? That for me says just get consent, you know, when you get the listing. I know it sucks, it's an extra form. You just explained it. You already explained that, hey, we might come into multiple rep throughout the course of this, especially now since there's no customer service. If you have your own buyer, it's going to be multiple rep. Just get consent when you're getting the listing signed.
Maria said you absolutely cannot get that form signed at the listing, and the date is going to be there.
That's correct.
They said that, but the form says may be entering into. I understand, but the other option is stop what you're doing and go to them and get it signed.
Gord, just sign the first one. The people are going to think, do I got initial everyone? Just the first one, just in case that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's, the whole reason for this is because they changed the timing for consent of multiple rep. And like, I know that's the way they wanted to do it, and I get it, but realistically, it's not gonna happen. So I would just get the consent prior.
Whoever is doing it, they're not realistic.
No, I mean, they don't sell, they make all the rules, right? So. No, so this is, there's two different forms. There is, where's my mouse? There's Form 325 and Form 326. 325 is the disclosure and consent for the seller to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I might be entering into multiple rep with a buyer, or I am entering into multiple rep with a buyer. I need your consent to move forward so we can be in multiple rep. And then 326 is just the inverse of that. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, turns out this is property I have listed, or if they want to buy a FSBO and they agreed, and the seller agrees to pay commission, there's a limited service listing agreement now. Person's going to have to be your client, so you say, hey, got to get permission to take the FSBO on as a client. Okay? Just 326 is for the buyer, 325 is for the seller.
So you get 326 signed when we're getting the buyer rep signed. You get 325 signed when we're getting the listing signed.
I have no problem with that, yeah. Yeah. And I know Ray said that because he's like, well, they can't consent to something that hasn't happened yet. It's not going to happen. The form right there says maybe entering into it. So right there, I would fight it on that and say, well, this says that I might be entering, and I might be entering. Yeah.
So the buyer can win, but then the buyer can't.
Yeah, because you're talking to them about multiple rep when you're getting the contract signed anyways, and you're explaining it. So you say, if that happens, do I have your consent to enter into a contract with the seller or with the buyer?
So we do the listing, just get the sign.
Yeah. This is, so 325 is an extra form in your listing kit. That easy. Any other questions on that?
We just don't send it to the board.
No, this is just, you keep it there. Yeah.
So
For your files.
what you're saying is to have them initial every certain point, which are.
No.
No, just that first one.
Well, I mean, I would be doing probably the third one.
Well, just how would you know what scenario it's going to be until you're in it?
Well, because if it's your listing and you're the designated rep,
Just for that scenario?
you'd be multiple rep and designated rep, right? Because you're the designated rep for the listing, and then if you're getting a BRA signed, you're designated rep for the buyer too.
So if no other situation exists, you can do it up front.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first one, when it's not your listing, but the same brokerage.
First one would be if you had brokerage rep. Like, so if you had an old listing, because again, and that's the same thing, like we talked about the 320, where it either says brokerage rep, right? But if you're the designated rep, you just get the third one initialed. Pat?
If we could ask everybody to speak a little louder on your questions so everybody in the back can hear, because they're good questions.
If you had a listing signed, like listing signed before December 1st, you don't have to give that the sign 325 now.
No, you still do.
I gotta backtrack and go back and say, hey, we got new forms, you have to sign these.
Now, realistically, if you have an old listing and you're going to be entering into multiple rep to double end, you just have to get this signed when you enter into multiple rep. Yeah.
But Ray mentioned too, that Rico is probably gonna give us 60 to 90 day kind of play period type thing, remember at the meeting? He had mentioned that, so by then,
Yeah.
should be done, right?
Yeah, because I mean, it's going to be a learning period for everybody for the next 2 months, especially with all the open offer stuff.
And even their as Brad just said, over the next 60, 90 days, there's going to be things not done right. It's a learning curve, even for Rico and everybody else. And the only time it would be a problem is if something goes wrong. So the bottom line is just try to make sure you're doing it correct and being direct with your clients. Your folder, make notes on this date I did this date I did that, until everybody gets to know this a lot easier. Like right now, we don't have all the answers. You can see he's pretty proficient on this. I'm glad he took this part over, not me. Yeah. And I'm pretty knowledgeable, but he keeps teaching me. And actually, he and I went, against each other when we were talking schedule Schedule Cs because he thought it should be in there. But he understands totally why I don't want it, and then you understand totally why we don't want to list our services. It's a learning curve. That's all I'm saying. And you know, things are going to go. So we're trying to give you the best practice going forward to make your job easier. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I may jump. Oh, you got that good. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was, because I was going to say, speaking about things that might get messy. So you all know they moved to an open offer process. The seller has the option to do that, okay? It's not mandatory. I know there's been some article posted that said moving forward it will be, and some of them have been misleading, but.
If I may ask, do you think this is good for your sellers? No. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not good for your sellers.
You have to know about it though, because at the end of the day, if the seller's.
What's that?
No, it's
Go ahead.
It's unilaterally up to the seller if they want to do an open offer process or not. And they can change their mind at any time. There are basically no rules for this, okay? There's really not, and that's even the way Ray Ferris explained it. But you got to be aware of this. So all this is that the seller can opt in or opt out at any time for an open offer process. And what that is they can disclose the contents of any offer to any buyer that has an offer on that property, okay? The only thing they can't disclose for privacy is they can't disclose the name or the address of the buyer, right? You've got to keep it private. But as you can see, they can disclose price, deposit, conditions, other closing date, etc. And now the rule with this is if they disclose anything, they have to disclose it to every single buyer that has an offer. They can't just say, hey, go tell the second best offer that the best price is this. No, you'd have to tell, if there's 5 offers total on a property, you have to tell all 5, right? You don't have to disclose all 5's price. You could say, hey, tell everybody the best offer on the table is $500,000, right? And they could just disclose the one offer, but they have to disclose it to all 5 people, okay? That's really the only rule with this. If you tell one, you tell all.
If you tell what one offer is, don't you have to give the price on all the offers?
Nope. You could say, tell everybody this offer's that price, this offer has that closing date, and this offer has this much deposit.
How do you disclose that? You have to put it.
Probably just gonna be done through touch base. Yeah.
You also have to put, so if buyer has an offer, you could also put a clause that states, I don't want my offer shared to anybody, and then the seller cannot share, even though they've got that signed, and the buyer, or my offer is null and void and be taken away.
Yeah, this is the idea. You don't have to take a picture. This is a pre-printed clause, okay? So you're gonna have, and this is what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have discussions with our buyers and say, hey, look, you know, if we're in a multiple offer situation, would you be okay with the contents of your offer, price, deposit, condition, etc., being disclosed to every other buyer that has an offer on that property? Some might say no, some might say yes, right? And depending on what they say, if they say no, you got to know because you got to be able to protect them, right? And then so if that's the case, this clause is just going to become standard, right? You're going to use your debt payo 2, you're going to use your INSP 15 for your walkthrough, and you're going to be using this one, okay? This clause basically says if the seller chooses to disclose all contents or any contents of this offer, that it becomes null and void, right? The idea of that is it's kind of a loop, and it says they can't disclose it because if they disclosed it, it would be dead.
But they can still disclose it.
But it would be dead.
Yeah, but if that's the highest offer.
Yeah, but then if your highest offer.
You can't disclose a dead offer, right? Like that's the purpose. That's the purpose of the clause. And if you guys are in any TRESA groups online, I know there's a bunch of people who don't agree with this, and I'm not a lawyer. But the end of the day is OREA's legal counsel wrote this for that purpose.
So if you disclose the offer is void, but can you disclose the information to the other offers?
Can you?
No longer a valid
Yes.
offer.
It'd be a dead offer.
That's when it becomes void, but it doesn't become void until the seller decides to disclose that offer.
But then at that point,
Discloses it, that offer.
they'd have to put an update and say, okay, this offer is dead, and right, if that was the highest offer, So the highest offer is 50, the highest offer is 5.
You would be doing a disservice to the seller by just, if the
The idea of this clause is to stop them from disclosing.
How are you gonna prove they disclosed it?
It's through touch base. Email, phone call.
Well, if they have to send it to everyone, but they
Hold on.
don't send it to you, then
Sorry?
If I'm just selling it, and I'm sending off an offer, and I know I'm competing with 5 offers, well, I know in advance the vendor is gonna do that, or is allowed to do that, do I get disclosed to them?
If the agent says, yeah. There's no requirement for them to put it in the remarks, in the listing.
And it's not for them to tell me in advance?
No, they can do it whenever they want. Because this could be it. It could be a closed offer process, right? All 5 offers could be disclosed or presented.
Right.
And then after that, the seller could say, oh yeah, I want to open it up. And they can do that. It's in their right.
But if the buyer says that I don't want my offer to be disclosed,
Then you can't disclose it. Because if they disclose it, it'd be dead.
if you have telling other 5 people that I have the highest price, and this offer has to be higher than the highest price, so how are you going to disclose the highest price?
You couldn't.
maybe has a better condition than somewhere else. Maybe they have an unfavorable condition, meaning, I don't care about the price, but I'd rather close sooner.
Well, and you might have buyers that don't care, right? But this is for the buyers that don't want their info and their offer being shared, right? And this is where I said it's going to get messy, because they're like, well, can you disclose it? Well, yes or no? Well, if you disclose it, it's dead, right? So this is where it's going to kind of be, you know, a soup sandwich for the first couple months. And I'm sure there's going to be people arguing it and refuting it. But the idea is, if they disclose your offer, they can't accept it, right?
That's why it's our best practice, our opinion, guys, it's our best practice not to have those initial, like, let's face it, we all guide our sellers, massage it, so to speak, right? And it's probably better, best practice, to advise not initialing all those spots, and keep it like it is now.
Yeah.
Then you might not run into that soup and sandwich. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
do what you want, but it's probably better.
Well, because the idea is, like, we're going to have to advise our sellers now the cons of the open offer, because they're reading everything in the news or reading articles saying, oh, they have all this power now, and it's all this unfairness. We have to disclose that to them and say, look, you know, if you get 5 offers in and 3 of them or all of them have that clause, right, they might go out. Or if you disclose all 5 of them, I assume if you're disclosing the offers, you're sending them back, right? So then we got to give them the risk, hey, if you disclose and you send them back, they might not come back, right? The offer was presented. You didn't accept it, right? If you said, well, this is the best offer, do better. They say, oh, no. That already happened in multiples. They said, well, piss on you, I'm going to walk away, right? They have to know the risks of the open offer process and sending people back to try to get more money.
Does this affect things like when you just call, like I'll call Aldo and say, Aldo, number 2, the other offer is, 5,000 higher than you can, up 10,000.
I mean, we've been doing that anyways.
I know.
The idea behind the rule is you got to tell everybody. But it's if your seller directs you to, right? But I mean, we're going to do what we're going to do anyways, right? John?
What scenario would there be out there where a buyer would not want this? Why would they want
Well, okay, let's say my buyer has the best offer, right? I have the highest price.
So why would they?
Well, you don't know that, but I'm assuming that before writing.
No, but why would they want their offer disclosed?
Because if they disclose the highest price and somebody's willing to up them,
And then the buyer's okay with walking away?
this is the conversation you have to have with the buyer.
So you put a new offer at that point? Like, if your buyer has that clause in there and it gets disclosed, now you're out.
Well, the idea, I wouldn't think you'd be putting this clause in if your buyer's okay with it. Because this is the thing, like John said, your buyer has to be willing to walk away, okay? By putting this clause in. Because you're putting pressure on the seller to say, do not disclose my offer or I will walk away, right? That threat is only credible if you're actually willing to walk away from the offer, okay?
I was on today with Ray Ferris and the lawyer.
Yep.
And the option came up that the buyer can elect not to have their offer disclosed and keep it alive. Not, you can, don't disclose my
Yeah,
offer.
you can still edit it, yeah.
So that's another, you can take that as a part out of that.
Then what would the
Yeah.
repercussions be if they?
But there's nothing stopping the seller from just saying, disclosing it. Because the seller, the thing for this process is the seller has all control. So the reason this clause was created is because the buyer says, I don't want to partake. But if the seller reads that and says, I don't want to partake, they say, well, poo on you, I'm going to disclose it anyways, right? The idea is you have some repercussion if the seller chooses to disclose your offer.
I think it's important to note that you can't disclose the person's name or the address of their
Yep.
ATM.
Yeah, we went over that, yeah. For privacy.
So, if the highest offer is a conditional offer, you don't have to disclose the conditions, right?
See, and this is the thing. So Aldo said if the highest offer is a conditional offer, right, and it doesn't have this clause, the seller could just say, hey, the highest offer is $550. They don't know that it has a house to sell, right? Because they don't have to disclose that, right? So you could just say the highest offer is $550, and somebody who has 5 cash, they're like, oh, well, I got up to $550. When they didn't realize it had a house to sell, it had a home inspection, it had financing.
So at the beginning of when you're talking to your seller and they're not going to disclose anything, then they get the 5 offers and now they want to start disclosing stuff. Do we have to get that Form 209 signed right then?
Yep.
So we have that?
I would, because that's your direction from the seller, saying, I want you to disclose this, this, and that, right?
So we always get that signed in real time?
Yeah, so if you're doing an offer presentation, I'd keep the 209 with you anyways, because you never know if that, I don't want them to, but if they're adamant on it, have it with you.
And then I just wanted to circle back, you said, so again, I have 5 offers. The best way to disclose everything to those 5 agents you're recommending is through touch base, not just copying 5 agents on an email, doing it that way, you're saying?
You could do it that way. I mean, touch base has just been the easiest way for notices. But there's no, I mean, you could call all 5 of them if you wanted to. You could text them. It's whatever you want to do. You just have to notify them.
You have to get that form signed each time. They send the offers back, they come back, send it back again.
No.
One time?
Yeah. That's just when your seller chooses, I want to do the open offer process. You get it initialed then. So you say this is, just like you do 244 right now to hold offers, it's your direction.
Will we know, I think you answered this already, I didn't put it up. Will we know if it's an open process from the listing as a buyer agent?
There's no requirement. There's no requirement for them to put it in the listing, to put it in the remarks. I would, you have to be prepared for it, yeah. Yeah, if it was me and I'd send the touch base and then I'd call them. I'd say, hey, I want to check this out. Just curious, is your seller doing open offers, closed offers? They could say yes, no, I don't know, right? And then they could change their mind anyways. So it's kind of irrelevant. I would just assume.
John? Sorry, if, okay, say a seller has 5 offers on the table and they come back and say, okay, the highest offer is $550. Now, you've already submitted your offer as a buyer at $500. What are you supposed to do then?
Well, here's the thing, right? Because, and this is what I have said, because there's no point in doing an open offer process if you're not sending people back, right? Because why would the seller just want to be, hey guys, just so you know, the best offer is $550. Okay, and guess what? What if the next best offer was $475? Guess who's not sending a deposit tomorrow? The buyer paid $550. So to me, the whole idea of the open offer process would be say, this is the best offer, do better, and you send them back. It'd be now like if you had multiples. And you get the top 2 or whatever, you send them back, right?
Basically, if you say this is the best offer, what is the seller rejecting all the offers and sending them back? That's most likely what they're saying. This is the best offer.
Because that's what it would be. Like, because the only reason you would do this is if you're trying to get more money for the seller. Because it wouldn't make sense for the seller to just disclose it and say, okay, I accepted this one. You would just accept it, right?
But remember what I was saying earlier, business as usual. What do you tell your seller? You know, you've got a risk of none of these offers coming back.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just making it
Exactly.
Lou?
Okay, hold on for
Come on, let's listen, please.
No, you can't say any number you want, because if it ever went to RICO, they would want the offers, and you'd have to prove it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing if you tried to mess around now, right? You could lie now, but good luck. So, no, they can't. But at the end of the day, anybody can do whatever they want if they don't care about the rules. Realistically, right?
Enough on that topic. Is there any other questions? Go ahead.
So I've got the best off at 550, and the seller makes the announcement that, you know, at 550 is the best off. Can I back out of that 550 if I see no one, you know, I don't know, like what happens then?
If you have that clause in your offer,
Okay, all right.
if you have that clause, then
And
you can.
that's why I would put it in. And maybe you could even amend the wording to say, you know, the buyer has the option, right? Instead of just making it, if you do, it will. Because depending on what might happen, they might just disclose it, somebody might not beat you.
Quick question, so if the highest offer is 550, it has that clause in it, and you disclose it, and it's dead, aren't you disclosing something that's not true?
See, and that's, honestly, that's the intention of the offer, is you can't disclose it, because if you disclose it, it's dead, and you can't disclose a dead offer, right? So but I mean, there's gonna be people, I know there's gonna be agents who disclose it anyways, right?
Games will be played.
The first 2 months are gonna be messy, guys. I don't think you're gonna be running into a lot of open offers, because it's not in the best interest. You might in the first couple months, because people are gonna try it.
Again, Josh, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, if you found out an agent disclosed the price to the next highest offer through like a friend or whatever, what repercussion do you really have? Can you make them?
It'd be the same as what did you have before December 1st, right? First of all, you gotta prove it. And then, yeah.
But like, what, you know, weeks after, I'm just saying, like, it's like, you.
I mean, the nice thing is, the other thing that came with TRESA is that they can open a file without an actual consumer complaint. So they did update that with the disciplinary committee. But I mean, it would be the same repercussions as before. There's going to be, you know, greasy people out there who are still going to bend the rules. But it's if you can prove it, what's the repercussion now?
Like, could you void your buyer's contract after like the deposit's been given and everything's happening? Like,
If you found out it was disclosed?
yeah.
I don't have the answer. That would be a legal issue, right? You'd have to be able to prove it was disclosed, right? And this is just to prevent it from being disclosed during the offer process.
Not gonna spend thousands of dollars to try to find out.
Yeah.
Maybe we should put everything that the lawyer has to do with this, if we don't do that.
Yeah. A perfect world.
Well, I may say, you know, we were talking about Brian Buffini's got his predictions. We can go to that, or if you want to continue on this topic, you know, other parts of it, we can. Brian? But,
Does anybody have any questions on SRPs? Self-represented parties.
What is considered an offer?
what is what?
If someone made an offer on a napkin, somebody, is that an offer?
Yes. In Ontario, it just has to be on paper.
Okay, it has to be on some type of paper.
It could be on a napkin.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you advise your client if you came in with an offer written on a napkin?
You'd counter it.
Can we have our own little idea of the minimum things that have to be with an offer? They need to give us their name, their email address, their cell phone number, and if it's on a napkin, that's fine.
There's really no minimum. It just has to be a written offer on paper. So you're talking like maybe if there's an SRP buyer that comes up? Yeah. So the idea, and Ray even covered this in one of the classes he did. So you can't provide any services that use your skill, judgment, etc. to an SRP. So you can't write an offer for an SRP, okay? Now they say, well, how does it go about? I would just go to the SRP and say, okay, either have your lawyer write it, or if he's really that dense, write it on a piece of paper. I'll bring it to my seller, right? And then at that point, you'd counter it. You'd put it on the actual form. You'd give it to the SRP. Say,
Just get an offer from the seller, made it out to the buyer.
yeah, you could still just do an offer. Yeah, if you wanted to do that. If they didn't want to write something, you can still just write an offer to sell from the seller. Just make it irrevocable from the seller to the buyer.
Realistically, it'd be your duty to put it on the proper form.
Well, yeah.
For the seller, you're working for the seller.
Yes.
I still don't understand how this benefits the buyer.
It doesn't. No buyer wants to be self-represented, except for, I'm sure there's 0.5% of the population that really, really hate us for some reason, because we drove all the prices up. And they just don't want to deal with us, so I'm sure they're out there, but I'm sure 95 plus want to be represented, because we have to give them the risk forms. And on that website I showed you, the ricoinfoguide.ca, it has the SRP disclosure, because if they want to be self-represented, you have to give them the RICO info outside of the guide. It's a 4-page one that says, yes, these are the risks of being self-represented. You could get screwed and you're on your own.
Can we just say no? Call another agent?
Yeah, you don't have to work with them.
It's your business. You're asking us to do more work and now you're paying for it.
You could say no. You could have said no before December 1st anyways. You could have said no before anyways. Just like they can say no to sign a contract. You say, no, I don't want to work with you. Sorry. Go talk to somebody else. But I mean, the idea is if an SRP comes and they have a credible, it's in your seller's best interest. You know, you got to find a way to deal with them, so you got to know how to do this.
But you still get paid.
Yep. From the seller. Yeah.
From the seller.
Because you have the listing contract.
Even though you're working with the SRP.
Yeah.
Does that SRP, and anywhere, does it show that that SRP does not get any remuneration from the deal? They cannot collect a commission.
No, they can't.
I know they can't.
It says right in the listing agreement, we can only pay out a cooperating brokerage.
Okay, but on that SRP that they have to, like any of that acknowledgement that they're acknowledging, is it on there that they do not receive remuneration?
Because
from-
They can't.
They're not party
Yeah.
to the contract.
Yeah.
In the listing contract, they're not party to it. Just the agreement of purchase and sale, and they're acting as a self-representative purchaser.
Right.
Correct.
So how do we collect commission for a deal that might not be offered in cooperating brokerage? Like, how do we collect it?
Like a private?
Yeah.
Okay. I can go over that here real quick. So since we no longer have, where the heck is it? I think it's this one. No. It's 230 is the form. I don't think I have it, so we'll go find it here. So the question is, how do you collect commission from a FSBO? Okay, before we had customer service, property not listed. Now we have limited services, seller representation. So if somebody is for sale by owner,
But if it's listed, they're not paying the cooperating brokerage. It's zero. They don't want to pay the cooperating brokerage anything.
well, they have to at least put $1 or something if it's
Okay,
listed,
no.
but I know what you're saying.
You're client, you've been with them for a year now. This is the house, and how are you going to collect that from the buyer?
If you can't negotiate it with them, you'd have to, yeah.
So you're just going to mail them an invoice just like Emery would and pray to pay it?
Or maybe work with,
Contract.
yeah.
It's on your agency, right?
Yeah, negotiate with the seller though.
But you have to have that
Just
signed.
negotiate with that seller,
Yeah.
if the seller's willing to pay.
And try to get it in the confirmation,
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess, okay.
Try for 3 if I take 2.
I guess I'll take 2.
An hour ago, I had mentioned, for a buyer to buy the property, they might not be able to pay a commission, it's gotta go through the deal. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we've gotta build the commission into it, otherwise they can't buy your house.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fair, that's a good con, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then it might be, well, they have
Just
to offer
let me know
less.
what price you're happy with, including the buyer's commission.
Okay, that's a
And
good-
build it into the mortgage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's what we did before.
yeah, because they knew they were paid 5%.
Yeah. So back to the, we'll do this one quick. This is, say your represented buyer finds a private list they want. If you can get, like before, if you can get the seller to pay commission, this is the form you'd be using now, 230. This is just a limited representation agreement for a listing. You know, you just do it, maybe you do it for 24 hours, you do it for a week, whatever. But the idea with this is, the unfortunate thing is you still have to represent them because you cannot enter into a contract with anybody unless it has provision for representation, okay? The idea for this is you would just, on the Schedule A, you'd put the only service the seller agrees to receive is I present them an offer. That's the only service you're going to give them. They're still going to be your client, but the only service you're going to provide to them under the limited services contract is just presentation of an offer. That's it. Okay? The unfortunate part is you're still going to be in multiple rep with your represented buyer and the limited represented seller. But this is a form you use to secure your commission, because we can no longer have, we can't just have an agreement to pay commission, because we can't sign an agreement with a consumer unless it has a provision for representation. That's how you'd go about getting paid from a FSBO.
Could a FSBO sign 6 of those with 6 different agents?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's specific to the buyer.
But yeah, it would be,
It's specific to the buyer, so he has other brokerages coming in with different buyer names. That is specific to a buyer that's presenting an offer.
Where do those dates put the buyers?
I'd put it right in there, if that's what you're doing.
In the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would put it there, something to identify to protect, because, I mean, yeah, they could, right?
But can we disclose our client's name?
Yeah, because, I mean, it's gonna be on the offer.
We have to sign it.
I don't have a perfect answer for that now, but that's what I assume, that's what I would do, yeah.
It'll be specific to,
Yeah. So, but that's the idea, to get paid from a FSBO since we no longer have customer service property not listed. I think that's all the major stuff I wanted to go over, form-wise.
Again, as we go forward, a lot of other questions will come up, and, Gordy, I, and Denny will keep you all informed as to what to do and what we should not do.
Yeah.
But, again, just remember, it's business as usual,
Yeah.
okay?
Nothing really changes. And I mean, as more info comes out, I'm sure some of the things are gonna change. Some things might get updated, some clauses might get updated.
Yep.
As we know, we inform.
Good.
But as
Okay.
usual, if you have any questions on this stuff, you can call myself, you can call Glenn, you can call Denny.
We're there to make sure you don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
The way I look at it. Amy?
Much difference in the paperwork when it's using leases as opposed to sales. Just because like, so I've got a lease that is working on Friday. I know under both, they both met themselves and showed up at the same time at the property. Today, I'm writing leases. So I've done the multiple rep form. I'm in the application process.
Yeah.
For them, right? So is there anything much different between the lease paperwork?
Not really. Even the 320 form is, or the 324 is the exact same as the 320. That's not out there. Still designated draft. And disclosure for multiple applicants.
So I was gonna have to sign all of that with the application. Agency paperwork.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? You all know everything now?
Throw Buffini on.
They still come and bug you, go to no problem.
Welcome to our 16th annual Bowl Prediction Show. And we're going to cover things that we normally cover, but it has